having this conversation on autonomous weapons, the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, and Sri Lanka. In my capacity as the coordinator for the campaign, it is my pleasure to introduce and speak a few words about the campaign to stop killer robots. The campaign to stop killer robots, or lethal autonomous weapons as they were formerly known, was launched in London in 2013, and since then has been working as an international coalition to preemptively ban fully autonomous weapons. The videos that you just watched would leave little doubt as to why the campaign so fervently advocates for a preemptive ban and a comprehensive prohibition on the development, production, and use of these autonomous weapons. A mere month beyond the supposed advantages of developing autonomous weapons and this technology reveals that even if such technology were to yield a few advantages, they would come at much too high a cost. As you heard the coordinator for the international campaign, Mary Wareham, say on the video clip earlier, the removal of human judgment from the decision-making loop in war crosses a moral line. Allowing weapons the autonomy to engage in critical functions as target selection and attack by themselves brings with it a myriad of alarming consequences that strip away the fundamental premise of human dignity in decisions made in warfare. Human lives are reduced to numerical values, and a previously morally burdensome decision-making process that took cognizance of the human value of life is accordingly then reduced to a matter of algorithmic programming. The new decision-making process is devoid of human compassion, it is devoid of an innate moral compass, and only serves to distance the human from the decision to engage in violence, and thus makes it easier to make and decide to enter into actions of violence. Also making these decisions easier is the manner in which the use of autonomous weapons will so easily disrupt the tracing and ensuring of human accountability for any violations of international humanitarian that take place during the course of the operations of these machines. The decision-making process, however, is likely to be imbued with the social prejudices and perceptions of its human programmers. Would you trust a machine with zero human intervention to deal with a scenario where a child accidentally picks up ammunition on a roadside? Would you trust the same machine with distinguishing civilians from combatants before an attack, when some of the civilians in the vicinity of a targeted area could always be differently abled and perhaps unable to respond effectively to an evacuation order or notice? Would you trust the same machines when high risk and unpredictability in the operation of those machines means uncertainty and possibly debilitating consequences in volatile conditions of war, their vulnerability to cyber attacks, their use in the hands of the wrong parties, and possible errors in their pre-programmed technical operations? The dangers have now been consistently highlighted by technological experts across the world. Professor Noel Sharkey, Emeritus Professor of Artificial Intelligence at the Sheffield University and Chair of the International Committee on Robot Arms Control, has for years now warned of the tragic humanitarian consequences and destabilization of global security that these weapons are able to bring. For all these reasons and more that I do not have time to go into at present, the campaign to stop killer robots urges that all relevant stakeholders take all possible measures within their power to progress towards an internationally binding legal instrument that preemptively bans fully autonomous weapons. States have participated in the discussion on lethal autonomous weapons within the CCW forum since as early as 2013. But while the CCW process carries with it the potential of a protocol to retain meaningful human control over weapons and the ban of the use of lethal autonomous weapons, recent annual meetings have shown little progress. While the meetings have not shown much promise, it is, however, still undeniable that this movement to ban autonomous weapons is gaining traction. Consequent to the clip you listened to, several more states have joined the list to prohibit autonomous weapons, with Ecuador and Morocco joining the list very recently and bringing the total of states advocating a prohibition up to 28. The campaign calls upon states to build further on this momentum, highlighting the dangers inherent in these weapon systems and calling for their ban. We call on states, while pushing for the process to implement international treaty law, to also contribute by implementing national and regional law, crafting state policies, and putting in place other supplementary measures. The responsibility is not one that is limited to states, however. The development of these weapons and their technology often lies in the hands of the private sector and the technological industry. On the 18th of July 2018, more than 200 technology companies and organizations from more than 36 countries and with more than 2,600 individual signatures signed onto a pledge released by the Future of Life Institute at the International Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence in Stockholm. The commitment here was to neither participate in nor support the development, manufacture, trade, or use of autonomous weapons. The campaign calls on all the companies and actors in the industry to commit in the same way, opposing the removal of meaningful human control over the operations of weapon systems, and asking for a commitment not to be involved in the development of such weapon systems. I close with a reminder of the urgency of these actions. Lethal autonomous weapons are poised with the potential to be the third revolution in warfare, after gunpowder and nuclear arms. Once their production commences, their use is likely to trigger an arms race. The consequences, despite their extremely dangerous and morally reprehensible nature, are likely to continue untrammeled. This means, therefore, that no state will be safe, and no state should consider itself one that will remain unaffected. It is therefore clear that urgent action is required, and required now. Thank you. I would now like to hand over the floor to former Under-Secretary General to Disarmament of the UN, Ambassador Lanka, who has very kindly agreed to be here with us today. Ambassador Lanka is someone who needs no introduction to anyone in this room, and if I were to attempt, it would be a comprehensive introduction would take a very, very long time. However, in relation to what must be said, Ambassador Lanka served as Director of the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research in Geneva from 1987 to 1992. And later, Ambassador Lanka was handpicked by Kofi Annan to take on the challenging job of Under-Secretary General to re-establish the Department of Disarmament after the UN reforms of 1997. During his tenure, he piloted the UN role in arresting the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, anti-personnel landmines, conventional weapons, and weapons of mass destruction. He also broke new ground both in-house in taking managerial initiatives in gender mainstreaming and in work-life issues, as well as in the disarmament field by innovating the exchange of weapons for a development program, and also in the cross-sectoral linking of disarmament with development, the environment, and peace education programs.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not too late to wish you a happy new year as well. We hope the new year in Sri Lanka will be peaceful and not as eventful as the end of last year, especially since elections are predicted. I'd like to begin by saying how happy I am today to be in the company of this group, because it is one of the few NGO movements in Sri Lanka which has focused on issues that are of contemporary interest in Geneva. And I am also happy to see the Foreign Secretary here, signifying and illustrating a harmonious cooperation between the Foreign Ministry and civil society in matters with regard to disarmament. Sri Lanka has been foremost in the disarmament field multilaterally in many areas, nuclear, chemical, landmines and so on. But there has recently been, I think, a lull in our activities. But this fusion, I think, between the official part of the government and our civil society will, I think, lead to a new development with regard to Sri Lanka's role in international affairs. This at a time when multilateralism in general is under attack, and there is also no development with regard to disarmament agreements. The Conference on Disarmament, the single multilateral body vested with the task of negotiating agreements in disarmament, has been here for several decades. And we also do not have any bilateral agreements, instead of which the US has recently walked out of the INF agreement, which was an agreement that banned an entire category of nuclear weapons. So these are bleak times internationally, and with populism and the retreat of multilateralism, I think it's very heroic indeed that you are flying the flag of multilateralism here in Sri Lanka. Let me say that many people talk about security as being the foremost objective of states, and that is the justification for the arms race. But there has to be a distinction made between national security and human security. My experience working in international affairs in the United Nations and elsewhere is that the UN itself and many of the international actors, they see national security as associated with the defense of the state from external threats, both armed and unarmed. The focus of human security, however, is within a country, and it is to protect individuals in society. The security of states does not automatically result in the security of her people. Indeed, while standing armies are associated with hard power and with the protection of national security, let us be clear that Iceland, for example, since 1869 and Costa Rica since 1949 had no standing armies. History has also shown us that, especially in dictatorship, secure states could have very insecure people. Now, clearly the concept of human security is a much broader one than the military dimension, and it has been said famously by my former boss Kofi Annan, who recently passed away, that we will not enjoy development without security, we shall not enjoy security without development, and we will not enjoy either without respect for human rights. So, durable security rests on a tripod of physical security, economic development, and human rights. As with all tripods, stability depends on each and every one of the three legs. Now, I also want to go on to say that we are talking about weapons of mass destruction, chemical, nuclear, and biological, but we are also talking about other weapons, and the new genre of weapons that we are focusing on today are robotic weapons, the application of artificial intelligence to the development of weapons. But notwithstanding that, the SIPRI yearbook of 2018 gives us a global snapshot that there are 9 nuclear weapon armed states with 14,465 nuclear warheads, of which the USA and Russia alone own 92%. And annual military expenditure of the entire world is $1,739 billion, the highest level since the end of the Cold War, equivalent to 2.2% of global gross domestic product, or $230 per person. There are, of course, 63 multilateral peace operations going on in the world, which cost much, much less than the global military expenditure. I think it's important now to focus on the fact that we have this new phenomenon of robotic weapons, and I think we were told by the first speaker that the passage of history has shown us that pursuit of war has undergone changes with regard to the types of weapons that are used. New weapons are being used. The invention of gunpowder in China 1,000 years ago had a tremendous impact on the way wars are fought. And then we see different types of development. The nuclear weapon was introduced in 1945 and it was first used in Japan, and that itself has caused a revolution in warfare. Any further use of nuclear weapons would result, we know, in a total obliteration of human life on Earth, and also will have genetic effects in the future as well. So we need to be very, very careful to prevent any kind of situation that will lead to the use of nuclear weapons. Now what we are seeing right now is that while the possibility of a nuclear war by accident or by deliberate intent or by state actors or terrorist groups is still there, there is in a new era which we are being told is an era of the artificial intelligence and possible application of artificial intelligence to the development of weapons. There are hybrid weapons that could be developed with using traditional battlefield techniques with elements previously associated with non-state actors. And this is something that the group which I belong to before I retired, coordinated by Human Rights Watch, is trying to stop by having this Stop Killer Robots campaign, and I'm glad that Sri Lanka has joined that campaign. I must say that Ambassador Kavinath Arisingam, when he was our permanent representative in Geneva, did yeoman service representing Sri Lanka at the CCW, and also encouraging the campaign of which I was part at the time. And that campaign has now been with the CCW for 3 years. They are still rather disappointed with the pace of work because we are still very far from developing the instrument that we hope to achieve in order to ban killer robots. There are a number of countries who are not yet ready to sign on to a treaty, and as was mentioned by the opening speaker, the fact of the matter is that although we have 20-odd countries, I think, who are pledged to have a legal instrument banning these weapons, Sri Lanka, I'm afraid, is not one of them. And I think that's your first objective, to try to persuade the government here to sign on to that pledge. But beside that, I think the task multilaterally is to get the same kind of agreement that we had on landmines, which also took a long time, and other weapons of inhumane nature that we have been able to ban so far. So we now are worried about these weapons, the robotic weapons, because they escalate the pace of warfare, and they are likely to result in significantly reduced military casualties, but at the same time there will be no meaningful human control in the operation of these weapons. And it could be that they could ignite and foster arms races if the possession by some states and not others leads to the feeling compelled to acquire them against the possibility of asymmetric warfare resulting between technological haves and have-nots, because it's a spin-off to the application of artificial intelligence on arms. There is also the danger that these weapons, robotic weapons, could be acquired and used by non-state armed groups, including terrorist entities. And moreover, they will undermine existing law, controls and regulations. One of the issues that are frequently brought up in the discussions we've had in Geneva is that the fact of meaningful control will eliminate the proportionality aspect of the use of arms, so that when a situation is faced by a commander, he may not use the weapons of the lethality that are necessary, that correspond to what has been used against him. He may use an excessive force. And that's where, when you give the decision making to a robot, that is the danger that can result. So, for all those reasons, we hope very much that the killer robots campaign or lethal autonomous weapons campaign will lead to a convention banning these weapons. And this was a proposal that was actively pursued, continues to be pursued in Geneva. I think we are seeing a situation where internationally, in addition of course to the collapse of multilateralism globally and the rise of populism and leaders who are not very much constrained by legal norms, there is a danger that robotic weapons might prove attractive. And I think that is one reason why it's important for developing countries like Sri Lanka to take the lead. We have done so earlier. We have signed many conventions which restrict nuclear arms and chemical weapons and other weapons. And I think the robotic weapon is the next weapon of the future that we should aim at banning. So with these few words, let me ask the other speakers to develop some of the points that were being made already by the opening speaker.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Your support means a lot to us. Next, I would like to invite Ambassador Ravinatha Aryasena to speak a few words. Ambassador Aryasena assumed duties as a Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in October 2018 and was previously Additional Secretary to Economic Affairs and Trade in the Foreign Ministry since April 2018. Having joined the Sri Lanka Foreign Service in 1988, he was Second Secretary in New Delhi and Minister and later Deputy Chief of Mission with Ambassador rank in Washington. He served as Ambassador to Belgium, Luxembourg and the European Union, and as Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva and Consul General of Sri Lanka to Switzerland, while being concurrently Sri Lanka's ambassador to the Holy See. Between 1995-2000 and 2007-2008, he headed the Public Communications Division and was a Foreign Ministry spokesperson.
Ambassador John Dhanapala, former UN Under Secretary General for Disarmament, Mr. Vidya Bibnawardena, Coordinator of the Forum on Disarmament and Development, Ms. Yanitri Kumara Guru, Coordinator for Sri Lanka Campaign to Stop Killer Robots, Senior colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great privilege to be in such high company in discussing a subject on which I think I spent the last my last 5 years in Geneva, a very concentrated period because we were both chair of the CCW and also later the president of the Conference on Disarmament. Following Ambassador Dhanapala is always a formidable task, particularly so on disarmament, but sir, I can assure you that your good fight you started is being continued, and not only in CCW, which I will talk about, and how the law's mandate was improved in our time, but also through our being able last year around this time, in the 1 month we chaired the CD, to after 22 years get the 65 countries to agree to a decision to start substantive discussions under C5 areas, cluster areas. it is not just pleasing professionally, but it also brings out how difficult this field is to traverse, and that in doing so, while we are frustrated by movements towards goals, it is also important to try to understand how difficult these incremental steps are. Let me jump straight in to the laws, but before that, I want to commend Vidya and his colleagues for raising the bar in knowledge in this country regarding the weapon systems which you have been continuing advocating for lead-mine ban, cluster munitions and all those areas by bringing out this book, both in both vernacular languages, national languages, which I think will take this message to the people. Because otherwise these are seen as some ivory tower exercises which are very Colombo-centric and only of academic use. So I think you should be commended, and I want to assure you that the Foreign Ministry is fully committed to support these endeavors, and in our last restructuring of the ministry, we now have a dedicated person who deals with disarmament. And therefore I believe that we would be able to, it's important that unfortunately the cadres you created are towards the end, and we are having some gaps in the middle, but I hope that through having committed officers looking at disarmament, not only will we have people to focus on, but you will have interlocutors who are knowledgeable to deal with, who have empathy on this subject. Now, when Sri Lanka was endorsed as the president of the 2015 meeting of state parties, and I was to preside over this, and this happened in 2014 October, the CCW was essentially talking about laws in what you call an expert group. Countries were asked to invite an expert from their country. They came and sat on panels, spoke about things, but there was no ownership of the country concerned to what the expert was saying. And in this regard, in doing a lot of pioneering work, I must, Excellency, commend Ambassador Bientino of Germany, whom I worked very closely with through this exercise. Ambassador Dhanapala, when I wanted reinforcements to try to push things through a little, and I flew Ambassador Dhanapala. Ambassador Bientino also was very helpful, and we worked very well together. So through you, my appreciation to your country. So what we realized was, how do we overcome this barrier? Because there were two things happening. One was, this was called an informal meeting. And the second problem was that laws was discussed among other things. So the first thing Sri Lanka did, and we started doing this well ahead. You know, you start getting the chair, you were told you were going to be chair in October 2014, you were going to chair in December, I think it was November 2015, but our first effort was, how do we get the expert meeting which was going to take place in April next year, and Ambassador Bientino was chairing that, how do we upgrade that to take this issue on so that countries, states, parties would be made to speak as states. And we developed the approach that we will hold a single dedicated session to discuss this. Because I have found, when you put countries together, sometimes when you keep time and don't fill it, countries sometimes feel that if they don't say something, they get singled out by that. And that is a good reason to get countries to take positions. And it worked, because from never having had a discussion on on this issue of laws. We did have a discussion, and I think about 30 countries on that occasion participated as states for the first time. So for the first time you had countries take positions as states. Many had previously sat back and allowed the experts to come and talk, which didn't add up to any kind of position. The second one was we also diluted this informal nature of this discussion so that there was something on record. And one of the recommendations we finally took when we went into November that year to the final CCW session with Sri Lanka chaired was to bring up and center the question of how we go about this and the need for a GGE. And I must say that this was done after lengthy conversations with the key players, and your documentary identified a few of them. While there are players who which are open about their position, I must also say that there are many who hide behind others. And it also, the CCW, as Dhanapala would recall, one place where civil society is not always welcome by some times countries who normally embrace civil society is in the disarmament field. And for someone picking where to include civil society and where to keep them out is quite a formidable challenge. And however, we navigated through all that, and I think what Sri Lanka managed to do, we were not able that year to announce a GGE, and I very carefully went about it, but I didn't want to throw out something there and get it shot down. I felt we had come a long way in 1 year from a state never having taken a position to talk about where they stand on laws to actually have a discussion and speak up on laws. And I must say that many of the key states made an honest contribution towards trying to address the issue. So from there we come along, and at that meeting we made some very firm recommendations about how the next year's experts group meeting should work, and how I also had the opportunity, since I was there for about 2 years more, to push the laws agenda together with Mahfouz Al-Hafir, who was our expert on disarmament also, who did some very good work towards this goal. I must also commend people like Mary, whom we worked with very closely from civil society, who reinforced the pressure. And also at times we were able to keep them in the loop on what was happening as a result of the cooperation which Sri Lanka was working with at the time. And 1 year later, we were very happy in 2016 when it was decided at the 5th review conference that there will be a GGE on laws, and that is presently taking place. It may not be going as fast as one would like, but from my perspective, from where I sat in October, November 2014, it has gone a long distance. So I guess it's a question of whether it's half empty or half full. And so I must say to those of you who are disappointed that it hasn't gone fast enough, and Vidya keeps complaining to me about that all the time, and Dhanapala does so too. What I want to say is that Sri Lanka is very committed to this process, but sitting where we are, hearing all sides of this argument. And I think chairing the CD, one thing I realized, something, sir, which probably in your time you took for granted, was that how well positioned Sri Lanka was to play a role in international affairs if it was ready to lead from the middle. far too often in recent times. Either we are taken for granted or otherwise we corner ourselves in some extreme where we become irrelevant. But if we choose to lead from the middle, I think Sri Lanka's value and recognition in whatever field in the international affairs and multilateralism is still very ripe and alive, and that is something I found in my 5.5 years in Geneva, and my successor Ambassador Aziz, who now is chairing the conference Cluster Munition Convention, is experiencing as well. So I want to assure you, while civil society pushes these issues, that the foreign ministry won't be very far behind. We might not always fully agree on every tactic, but be assured, my Additional Secretary Multilateral Jawad is also in the audience, so we speak for the institution that we are very engaged with it. We are watching things, but we are very conscious that we can't do this unless we carry everyone along. We might have different tactics to carry each one. Like I said, you gave a 2-hour session, and all of a sudden we had about 5 people registering, and we said, oh my God, what's going to happen? 2 hours, 5 countries. But as you found countries speak, you found others feeling that if they didn't speak, they'll get left out. So you were there on that occasion. So as a result, we ended up with some 30 countries speaking. So once you have that, then naturally you had those who wanted it banned, you wanted people who didn't want it banned, but a bulk of them are in the middle trying to figure out where they are. I would say we too, but on the upper end towards supporting the fact that these weapons should not be allowed to be brought about. But nevertheless, I think we are appreciative of the difficulties on all sides of the spectrum, who produce weapons, who have to give up something, who are engaged in multi-purpose use, multi-use of these weapons, dual-use technology is involved in this. And so I think this discussion, though it is taking a little more time to any of our comfort, I think this discussion is very much alive, and the fact that Ambassador Dhanapal and people like that, who have for years fought each of these battles, whether it was nuclear, non-proliferation, and now laws, I think the victory is not too far away. So persevere and don't give up. And we will also do what Sri Lanka can do to ensure that we are doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It is, of course, undeniable while the campaign leaders obviously spearhead this movement in a sense of urgency, that there are great difficulties in achieving consensus with regard to international treaty law in general, particularly within the CCW, given that it operates on consensus. And I believe that this is also why there is now also conversation about perhaps different methods of approaching this problem of lethal autonomous weapons and its urgency. Also allow me to say that it was inspiring to still see Sri Lanka at some of the state's party meetings. I only saw it in August, but I've also seen material on the rest where the state has acknowledged the concerns in terms of lethal autonomous weapons, and hopefully this will help develop regional momentum along with countries such as Pakistan, which had expressed similar statement in moving towards a free future. Next, I would like to invite former Associate Professor of the University of Colombo and Founding Secretary of the Social Sciences Association, Dr. Kumari Jayawardena, to speak a few words.
Not used to saying ladies and gentlemen, we used to say comrades and friends, but there aren't many comrades left, so we'll say friends and well-wishers or whatever the cliche is. Okay, my speech is about women at the forefront of these movements, which is something that has to be highlighted, because in every epoch, the women's issue does come to the forefront. Even in the time of the Buddha, his disciple Ananda said, "What about ordaining women?" That's what the story goes, I'm not sure. And Lord Buddha's reply was, well, if you, the Buddha Sasana will last 1,000 years, but if you ordain women, it may only last 500. So that was a rather pessimistic outlook for women, but that was the myth that was propagated. Now, I would like to show that in every peace movement, women have been at the forefront. There were earlier movements in Sri Lanka, women peace, during times of war, and something very important was the gender committee appointed by the government to go to composed of women of all ethnicities. A committee, I was on that committee, which was chaired by a Norwegian lady called Mrs. Heiberg. We flew to Kilinochchi to meet the LTT women who were led by Kamalini, who was the leader of, and they were all very hesitant about meeting women from the south. But soon the ice was broken after a cup of tea and discussion of families and children and so forth. We had very good interaction with the LTT women. Now this was important as the talks were going on at the moment. And as a result, we went twice to Kilinochchi and had this interaction, which I won't forget because it was one of the most important things that I have experienced. Now, the important intervention of women would often be in international campaigns for peace. For example, Jodie Williams has been mentioned, and she was a Nobel Peace Prize winner in 1992. And then there was Mary Wayham, I think they showed her picture too, coordinator of the campaign to stop killer robot. Then there was Anna MacDonald, control arms coordinator, and Yanika Kumaraguru, who is the coordinator of the campaign to stop killer robots. So wherever you go, it's true, you can chercher la femme, as the French say, whatever there is, just keep looking and insisting that women be represented in whatever is going on. So I have always advocated women's rights. Sometimes I think, why did I do that? Where did I get it from? And I got it not from my mother, as one would expect, but from my father, who was in the old legislature and who brought legislation to ban the asking or giving of dowries. And of course that led to a big debate, and every year he brought it up, and he said it's degrading to either ask or give a dowry, but it was never successful. So the issue has been kept going for many years. Now, I have found that in my interaction at the university, there has been no problem of any discrimination against women. There may have been other forms of discrimination, but I have not come across any particular discrimination. So I will leave it at that and ask you to pose any questions you have on this issue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. It's a being here with us today and for speaking a few words. Next, I would like to invite the coordinator of the Forum for Disarmament and Development and one of the directors of the Forum for Disarmament and Development, Mr. Vidya Abedin.
Good evening, Ambassador Janathanapala, Foreign Secretary Mr. Ravina Palisina, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a historical day for the Forum on Disarmament and Development. This is mainly because for the first time, the FDD patron Ambassador Janathanapala, Secretary Minister of Foreign Affairs, Excellencies are attending an event facilitated by the FDD after its formation last year, May. This event will be also our first event for this year. This may also be the first event in South Asia we can talk about the subject of disarmament this year. We have noticed that the subject of disarmament has been neglected subject by Sri Lanka for some years, particularly among the government sector, civil society, academia and the media. But in the past, Sri Lanka was one of the champions of disarmament and the country played a leading role at the UN and other international organizations. A few notable Sri Lankans became leading figures at the UN and at the International Court of Justice and worked on disarmament and related matters in our time. The late Judge C.J. Veeramanthi was the one and only Sri Lankan so far become Vice President of the International Court of Justice in 1990s. The United Nations General Assembly required an opinion from the ICJ on the legality of the threat of use of nuclear weapons. The ICJ Judge Veeramanthi observation on the opinion of the court was, I quote, "My considered opinion is that the use of threat of nuclear weapons is illegal in any circumstances whatsoever," unquote. His observation on the nuclear weapons is still in the UN. We were privileged to associate with the late Judge Veeramanthi and we will always remember him with gratitude. Ambassador Janathanapala is another notable individual who became the one and only Sri Lankan so far to become a UN Under Secretary General for Disarmament Affairs. During his tenure from 1998 to 2003 at the UN as the UN Under Secretary General, he carried out the human service. We still remember that he went to Iraq to investigate whether they were in possession of weapons of mass destruction in 1998. The UN proved that Iraq does not possess any WMD. I still remember the day he went to Iraq and I watched him on TV when he was interviewed by a CNN reporter. But an unfortunate war took place in Iraq due to wrong information resulted in the loss of thousands of lives. Ambassador Janathanapala later became a chief of United Nations University Council, President Parkos, Director CPA in Sweden, and several other honorary positions at local and international organizations. Now he served as one of the members of the Sri Lanka's Constitutional Council. He is with us today and he is also our patron. As I mentioned earlier, we have noticed that the subject of disarmament has been neglected in Sri Lanka. It is not a popular subject like human rights, peace and reconciliation, gender. We have noticed some reasons for this. The 30-year war, myths about disarmament, and some people believe that it will undermine the national security. civil society is reluctant to engage with the defense authorities on the matter, and lack of support from the donor community is not supportive of the subject of human rights, gender, peace, conflict resolution, language rights, reconciliation. Disarmament treaty text and related documents are not available in the language of Sinhala and Tamil. Universities do not teach disarmament as a subject, and there is less media attention to it. Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine continued to campaign under such circumstances and with limited resources. We were very small number of volunteers of 3-4 people always dedicated to the matter. I can see our colleague Prasanna Kurupu from coordinating the audience. After the war ended in 2009, we approached the then government for negotiating the banning of landmine cluster bombs and also ratifying the UN Disability Convention. But we were unable to convince then the government, and they pointed out various security reasons after the war in 2000. After the war, in 2015, our campaign translated the treaty text of landmine cluster disability convention into Sinhala and Tamil languages and approached the government and had several discussions and communication with them. These include the president, the prime minister, the speaker, ministers, secretaries, and commanders of the military. After a successful campaign, Sri Lanka ratified the UN Disability Convention in 2016, acceded to the Mine Ban Treaty in 2017, and Cluster Convention last year. And now the country is reaping the benefit of ratifying and accession to them. Last year in March, His Royal Highness Prince Mirad of Jordan, Special Envoy of the Mine Ban Treaty, came to Sri Lanka on a goodwill visit after Sri Lanka's accession to the Mine Ban Treaty. Prince Mirad is now sharing Sri Lanka's success story of mine action with other nations and encouraging the global donor community to support Sri Lanka's mine action. After Sri Lanka acceded to the Mine Ban Treaty and Cluster Convention and ratified the UN Disability Convention, last year Ambassador Dhanapala encouraged us to form the Sri Lanka campaign to stop killer robots and the FPD. We were thankful to the campaign to stop killer robots based in New York for their support, and particularly Mary Graham coordinated Stop Killer Robots campaign. We formed another 2 new campaigns in Sri Lanka last year. Those are the Sri Lanka campaign to control arms, which advocates Sri Lanka to accede to the Arms Trade Treaty, and Sri Lanka campaign to ban nuclear weapons. The FDD already is more concerned about improving the human security in Sri Lanka parallel to acceding to the Arms Trade Treaty. Last year we met the President, the Speaker, Ministers concerned, and communicated to the Prime Minister the importance of Sri Lanka's accession to the Arms Trade Treaty and reforming the security sector of Sri Lanka. This includes amending the existing Firearms Act, which has not been amended for the last 22 years, or passing a new act. The re-establishment of National Commission Against Proliferation of Illicit Small Arms, gun amnesty and collection and destruction of firearms publicly, and garnering continuous support and engaging with civil society, the media and the general public. The inter-community is ready to help the Sri Lankan government implement the Arms Trade Treaty and program of action on the small arms of the United Nations in Sri Lanka in terms of financial and technical support. This will improve Sri Lanka's human security sector immensely and particularly benefit the country with more resources for health and education sector. Sri Lanka campaign to ban nuclear weapons, which advocates Sri Lanka to accede to the Nuclear Ban Treaty. The NBT came to force in 2017, and the civil society group who campaigned for the treaty was awarded the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize. Sri Lanka yet to accede to the Nuclear Ban Treaty. The FPT also urges government to ratify the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty known as the CTBT. Sri Lanka is a signatory to the CTBT since 1996. Now it's more than 22 years Sri Lanka has still not ratified it. Subsequently, the FPT also became the secretary of the Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine last year. Now the FPT provides secretarial support to 4 campaigns in Sri Lanka and became the one and only organization which has several objectives, including promote research, educate and advocate the subject of disarmament in Sri Lanka, and link it to the country's development process, which also enables Sri Lanka to meet several sustainable development goals before 2030. It also helps Sri Lanka to become a soft power in the South Asian region and also take the leadership in the disarmament and related sectors. Under the development discourse of the FPD, it has important four cross-cutting themes. These are gender, youth, language rights, disability rights, and natural environment. Gender as a cross-cutting theme. Gender and disarmament is a new concept to Sri Lanka. We strongly believe that gender and disarmament are particularly important in a post-war country like Sri Lanka. We need women to lead disarmament sector in future Sri Lanka and take the leadership in international disarmament like the late Jasveer Malki and Ambassador Dhanapala. Janitra Kumaraguru became the first coordinator for the Sri Lanka campaign to stop killer robber. If I am not mistaken, Janitra will be the first Sri Lankan female to lead the disarmament campaign in Sri Lanka. I think we should give her not only Janitra, SLCBL, our Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine, appointed Nilasi Liyanage as the youth coordinator for Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine in 2017. In the same year, December, at the 16th meeting of the state parties to the Mine Ban Treaty in Vienna, she delivered the youth statement of the international campaign to ban landmines at the plenary session, and she was well received by the international humanitarian disarmament community. Now I am in the process of handing over my position as the coordinator of the campaign and to Nilasi after the third review conference of the Mine Ban Treaty, the Oslo this year. She will be the first female to lead the Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine. Nilasi will have a lot of work since Sri Lanka is going to declare itself a mine-free country well before the global deadline of 2020. Nilasi, please stand up and show your face. The Sri Lanka campaign to control arms, which we formed last year, is more concerned about gender and arms control in Sri Lanka. This important component will be led by Inoka Priyadashani, and currently we are working on a publication on the ATT. Then Inoka also in the audience, I can see that. Gender and violence Sri Lanka. We are preparing to launch this publication in 3 languages next month. In post-war Sri Lanka, gun-related violence is taking place in each district, and on many occasions, women become victims of gun violence and as survivors, and they face severe socio-economic consequences within the family and from the society. Youth and disarmament. Youth engagement is very important for FTD activities, as youth is the future. I still remember that I joined the SLCBL first as a youth volunteer campaigner some years ago. We have energetic youth volunteers helping currently FTD and campaign activities. We would name them those who are today: Gayatri Karanagoda, Prashanti Vignanatha, Sindhu Rajaratnam, Astra Najim, and Kalhar Disilla. We will encourage more youth to join with us in the future. This will make a pathway for youth to engage with a very important subject and also engage with the international disarmament community. Respect for language rights. We have a strong commitment and respect towards the implementation of the official language policy of Sri Lanka. As I mentioned earlier, the SLCBL published 3 treaty texts translated to Sinhala and Tamil in 2015, and also the petition we sent to the President in 2016. Last year, June, we published and launched a book on why also Sri Lanka should accede to the Arms Trade Treaty, and last December, the report of the Landmine and Custom Munition Monitor 2008 in the Sri Lanka section was translated and to local languages, launched in Jaffna. If you like, you can get both publications after this event, the registration table. The book we launched today also in all 3 languages. This month we will launch another book to be published on the environment, which will also be in 3 languages. Last year, the FPD informed certain violation of official languages policy by some international construction companies working in Colombo to the President, Prime Minister, the Speaker, Minister concerned, Official Language Commission and officials concerned. We have received response from all of them on our complaint. We have noticed that the subject minister himself brought the matter to the notice of the relevant diplomatic mission in Colombo. Support for disability sector. Sri Lanka campaign to ban landmine, campaign for ratification of the UN Disability Convention, which was ratified in 2016. Now we are advocating the government put in place local regulation to implement the convention in Sri Lanka without delay. In this matter, we continuously communicate with the Ministry of Social Services. Last year, FTD also met and discussed with the officials of the Colombo Municipal Council, Urban Development Authority and Road Development Authority with regard to building and payments accessibility for the disabled and to make the city of Colombo the first accessible city of Sri Lanka. When you came into this SLF building, you may have noticed of three entrance, the entrance ramp for wheelchairs. That was introduced after our intervention and discussion we had with the then chairman of the SLF in 2016. Prasanna Guru, please say two of us, went to his office and we had a big discussion, heated argument with then chairman, Professor Kabila Gunasekara, if I'm not mistaken. Last September, we met the Minister of Transport and official to make public transport, rail and train accessible for disabled. Currently, Sri Lanka without a single bus or train with the required facilities for disabled communities. The FTD continue to advocate the authorities on this important matter. Support for preserving the natural environment. This year in May and June, Sri Lanka will host for nearly 2 weeks the largest international conference and gathering country has hosted since independent 1948. That is the 18th conference of the parties to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. In 2016, we encouraged and advocated the government to destroy a container of animal blood diversity. The event received massive positive international media attention which Sri Lanka had never received earlier. For this event, then the Society Secretary General John Iscananan visited Sri Lanka and that led to the initiation of the discussion of having this important and massive conference in Sri Lanka. In 2017 at the 17th in South Africa, it was unanimously supported by all conference of parties that Sri Lanka host the next COP. The CITES convention is a very important convention for Sri Lanka for many reasons. But the treaty text of the CITES is not available in local languages, and we thought of this as a to translate it to local languages. We have already translated it and it will be launched this month. If you attend the launch, you will receive complimentary book on CITES and Sri Lanka. We will notify the book launch date and location. I can see Mr. Samartha Gunasekara from a custom director and our CITES secretariat director also here. Actually, he did the translation, the text of the CITES into Sinhala. So he will have a very good book launch too. Further, FTD is always trying to best to minimize the use of plastic and polythene and is supportive of polythene and plastic ban and proper waste management in Sri Lanka. We already advocated the Department of Wildlife Conservation and Forest Department to ban the use of plastic and polythene in nature parks. You may have noticed today that on our table, you do not see any plastic water bottles. Today, the Sri Lanka campaign to kill robots gives you a bag which is made out of cloth, not polythene. We may be the first people to introduce this type of bag to Sri Lanka. The FTD will make progress under difficult circumstances. the FTD has a dedicated team under the patronage of Ambassador Jayanta Dhanapala and getting consultation from prominent seniors in the relevant sector like Dr. Kumari Jayawardena. I should mention that. Our work is always of relevance of the people of Sri Lanka, particularly the underprivileged. We do not have sufficient resources still to carry out FTD plan activities, including reaching out to the Asian region and finding relevant partners in the region to promote disarmament and related activities. We hope that our work activity will be reviewed by the donor community this year onwards. So I will say that those are the things we will advocate to the government of Sri Lanka to ratify the accede to the Arms Trade Treaty, the Nuclear Ban Treaty, and CCW Protocol 5 on explosive, the remnants of war. So, and then we are requesting the universities to introduce disarmament as a subject. And then the media to carry our work to the grassroots level. Very important, we need media support. Now we are getting a media support. Thank you very much for the media. And then this is our final statement. The FTD strongly believes that the disarmament, the only subject that post Sri Lanka can take the leadership in a global context. I don't see any other subject we can take the leadership. Now we are the President Cluster Convention this year. Ambassador is taking the leadership. So we want to see other conventions also Sri Lanka will take the leadership. We know that Ambassador John wrote, "Dear Excellency, thank you very much for European Union meeting. You are pushing us, certain things." And Mrs. Singer always, you supported for me to go to Geneva 3 months ago because I was without any support. So we had a very good side event in Geneva with regard to the Mind Ban Treaty. So we want to take more and more young people to this disarmament convention in the future. I want to get retired soon to hand it over to the young people. So that is my plan. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vidya. Next, as we move towards wrapping up, I would like to invite Mr. Emine Hakim, Senior Lecturer at the Faculty of Law and Director of the Forum for Disarmament and Development, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, the members of the head table and our most valued invitees, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion of launching of the translation of the certain convention on the certain conventional weapons and autonomous weapons and Sri Lanka. I, on behalf of the Forum on Disarmament and Development, and on my own behalf, as a member of FDD team, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the participants for gracing here with us this evening. A big thank you to the Ambassador Dr. Jayanta Dhanapala for all your effort towards gracing this occasion and being the mentor, patron and guidance to the FTD for all its activities and efforts. Thank you, sir. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to Mr. Ravinath Arya Singha, the Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for his presence here today and for his comments and sharing his experience with us. Further, we are very grateful to German Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Mr. John Roth, and the UN Resident Coordinator and the special speaker, former Associate Professor of University of Colombo and the founding member of the Scientists Association, Dr. Kumari Jayawardena. and all the other diplomats of the missions in Sri Lanka for accepting our invitation, for gracing this occasion, also for your continued support and cooperation to the activities of the FDD. And also we would like to acknowledge our gratitude to all the media organizations for covering this significant event, and we hope that you will report the right message to the people as well as the stakeholders. I also wish to express my gratitude to our key member of the FDD, Mr. Vidya Gunawardana, for being an instrumental person and focal point for all the activities and campaign of these activities of FDD. Thank you, Vidya, for your courage, commitment and support. I wish to express our sincere thanks to Yanitra Kumaraguru for her untiring involvement on Sri Lanka campaign to stop killer robots, an active member of the FDD team and member of the organizing committee of this event. Thank you, Yanitra. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to our fellow directors of the FDD and volunteers, future of the FDD, our young crowds here, young members of the FDD team, for your support, your presence and involvement with the FDD. Thank you. I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of this task beyond their comfort zones. Thus, members of the head table, ladies and gentlemen, once again I want to state that we all are most grateful to all the speakers on the stage and all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the conclusion of today's launch. Thank you once again for taking time out on a Thursday evening and joining with us in this conversation. Do join us for refreshments outside. We would be delighted to continue this conversation over refreshments. And also just a reminder that there are copies of other FDD publications at the registration desk outside if you would like to call us. Thank you.